Good
Hello,
morning.
Austin. How are you?
Good. How are you guys?
Good.
Hello, everybody.
Hello. Are you able to hear me okay like this?
Yep.
You are? Okay. All right, good.
Let me just get my screens figured out here. And then I will just jump right in.
Okay.
I gotta move something real quick.
And while you're doing that, I'll just go ahead and get started with the format for today. So just everybody's aware. Basically, what we'll have, we'll just start out with Austin presenting her dissertation defense. And then after that, Dr. Lavenier, am I saying that right? Dr. Lavenier?
Sorry, I was on mute. I just realized that. It's Lavonier.
I'm sorry, what was that?
Lavonier.
Lavonier, okay. So after you present, Austin, Dr. Lavonier and I will ask you some questions about your dissertation. And then after that, we'll just have you your Zoom recording or your Zoom video. We'll deliberate, and then we'll tell you whether you've passed or whether you need to do some additional things with your defense. So that'll basically be it. That'll basically be the format. So I know this, once we've gotten to this point, pretty much I always look at this as kind of like a celebration for you, Austin, to present your research. I know we talked about it yesterday that you probably think of a lot better ways to celebrate, but this really is a celebration of all your hard work and dedication to your study. I know you're going to do a great job. So whenever you're ready, you can go ahead and get started.
Okay.
And I'll mute my screen as well, or my audio. And Austin.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm just gonna jump right in. First, I just want to say thank you to both of you guys so much. I definitely would not have been able to get where I am without your guys' constant support and feedback. And then I also felt like Dr. Ballard kind of ended up being like my behind the scenes kind of committee member. So I just wanted to acknowledge her support in this as well. And then of course my family support, because I think when you get a doctorate, it's definitely a family affair and you're not doing it by yourself. So definitely want to shout out to my family. Jumping right into my problem statement. So in order for students to be able to learn, they have to first be able to attend to a task, and they have to really be able to control their emotions and their frustrations. Students in a level D placement, which means that they're no longer being educated with their general education peers, have a high number of high incident behaviors that impact them. So this is physical aggression, aggression towards peers, towards staff, and oftentimes it manifests itself not just in the classroom, but at their home too. So this research study provides educators, parents, and other stakeholders an option of programming and interventions that can change the lives of students in a positive way. So that's really what I was looking for to be able to do. Furthermore, some schools use an alternative placement in order to discipline students with an emotional exceptionality. So they might be removed from their home campus to a level D placement or to a part-time kind of placement when kids have behaviors. And this type of discipline not only removes the students from their community, but it also removes them from any positive peer relationships that they might have as well. Students with emotional exceptionalities continue to actually have the worst educational, social, and behavioral outcomes of any other disability category. And so I really felt like this research was critical because we need to find ways to help these students succeed in a world that's really, really struggling on how to find support for them or how to give them the skills that they need. Hundreds of students across America will have a long-term substitute teacher in their class the entire year. And of course, this decreases the high quality instruction that's necessary for students to succeed, which Goodwin found in his research in 2018. And as few as 10 absences from a teacher in 1 year can decrease a student's ability to achieve to their full potential, which Miller found in 2012. And unfortunately, these statistics have not gotten better with time. And students who have an emotional exceptionality are impacted even more when you have teacher absences. The significance of this research really came from a place of it provided students with a low-cost, high-reward activity, yoga, that decreases stress and increases positive supports in the classroom. It was beneficial to explore if yoga is really able to help students move from a place of kind of a fixed mindset or negative patterns of behavior to a more positive frame of reference, especially when they're faced with challenging behaviors or tasks that kind of place hard demands on them. This also provided an opportunity to evaluate if there are changes to students' executive functioning processes when they engage in yoga. So our executive functioning processes are basically the brain's way of organizing information, taking it in, problem solving, all of those kind of things. And it's critical that students are able to do that. But unfortunately, what research is showing us is that students with executive functioning or with emotional exceptionalities tend to also have trouble with their executive functioning processes. With students who demonstrate a positive mindset when faced with a difficult challenge tend to be more successful than students who become frustrated or don't have grit when the tasks are hard. And again, research shows us that students with emotional exceptionalities tend to just give up on things when they're faced with these difficult tasks. They don't really have the ability to kind of dig in and change their mindset around things. There are several types of interventions that are being implemented with students who have emotional exceptionalities, and it is vast and wide. So some schools do level systems, positive praise. Some research is starting to look at whether animals in the classroom can support students with behavioral disorders or emotional exceptionalities. None of these provide a framework for changing the way that the students' brains processes information. And some research studies reviewed stated that level systems are too outdated and inflexible to really give students what they need. And when students are struggling with depression, anxiety, anger, and a lack of focus, a teacher must have research-based supports that will allow them to de-escalate situations and especially provide support to the students that they need in order to be able to be successful in the classroom. When looking at the research, the 8 limbs of yoga allowed this to happen when they're taught to students. And the more likely a teacher will also stay in a school or in a classroom if they feel like they've got the tools and the strategies to support students with behavioral challenges. So the significance of this study was really not just the benefit to students and then them being able to graduate high school and go to college and all of these kind of pieces, but it was also could potentially be a benefit for teachers if they're able to utilize yoga as a place of a tool or a strategy, again, to support students or a way for students to be able to do what they need to do. Yoga's history and the benefits of bringing individuals' bodies, souls, and minds into alignment dates back over 5,000 years. And yoga can decrease blood pressure, reduce stress, and increase balance and strength. All things students with emotional exceptionalities have skill deficits in. Studies also showed that overall students with emotional exceptionalities have a decreased reading ability compared to their general education peers, which the problem with this is that it then impacts them in every single subject area across the board. So it's not like if a student struggles to read, it just impacts them in reading class. It's also then trickles over to science, social studies, and mathematics. The data trends that I looked at is that yoga can decrease a student's stress level and increase their ability to focus on different tasks. Then the students' thought processes that lead to negative results can be disrupted, and students can increase time on task and increase the amount of time that they access their general education curriculum alongside their general education peers, again, instead of having to be removed from the learning environment in order to access their education. Students who are less anxious, less angry, and have better self-regulation will obviously do better in their academic skills. And as you can see from my slides, 75% of kids were below their expected reading level, and 97 were below their expected grade level in mathematics, according to Bradley's study in 2008. The research question that I really focused on was, how might doing yoga 3 times a week affect a student's executive functioning processes? A deficit in students' executive functioning causes delays in a variety of ways in a student's life. Again, everything from their ability to process language, organize tasks, peer conflict, as well as problem-solving skills can be impacted. This demonstrated problems in this question was essential to the study because it helped determine whether yoga could decrease this gap for students as they move forward. I also had 3 sub-questions that I took a look at. The first one was, how might doing yoga 3 times a week impact high incident behaviors? And really we're looking at those physically aggressive behaviors that impact them from being in the classroom with gen ed peers or impact them from being able to access curriculum because they're mad and angry. My sub-question B looked at the differences in students' classroom behaviors before and after yoga. And this looked at organization, whether they were able to attend to tasks, whether they got started on tasks, that sort of thing. And my third question was, how might students' participation in yoga change when they engage in yoga practice 3 times a week? And this kind of question aimed to answer really whether students are able to participate or whether their participation stays high, because we know that when you are excited about something and you participate in it, that the more likely that you're going to yield a positive result. If you hate going to yoga class and you don't want to do it, then it's probably not going to have as an effective result as it could. The gap in leading to the problem statement. So the educational world lives sometimes in a place of assigning blame and consequences when a student demonstrates behavior, instead of attempting to really understand what the behavior is trying to communicate and what the skill the student is really missing. The interventions or students with behaviors have changed based on the undercurrent and focus of the school climate. And whether it is a positive behavior intervention plan, suspensions, expulsions, or a level system, each school is kind of left up to themselves to try and determine how to support students with extreme behaviors. And students, according to Dr. Green, would do better if they could. So it's not like these students are just choosing not to behave in the classroom. They really are missing the skills that they need in order to be able to acquire the skill. And they have to be in a safe learning environment and a positive mind space to be able to achieve this. Traditional studies of discipline demonstrate schools look at reacting to students' behavior instead of being proactive, where again, yoga is a very proactive and preventative measure that can be utilized. During the literature review, I examined research that looked at philosophical views around yoga, school use of yoga, interventions being used with students, as well as the impact and emotional exceptionality has on students long term. I further looked at trauma, how trauma impacts students over time. I evaluated research studies on executive functions and processing speed and why this is so critically important for students in the classroom. I also looked at level systems and why research felt that without proper implementation, they were outdated and over-restrictive. Another area that I reviewed was animal therapy, because this is a growing area of research. However, this is another area where without proper training and support, it could be a problem for schools. And there's also a lot of mixed reviews on whether that's actually helpful long-term or not. The work that I did, the literature review that I did around the processing speed, was tied to a person's ability to take educational information in and do something with that information. So our processing speed is the key function that allows a student to access information during a math lesson or read fluently from a passage that is presented in class. And Benner found in 2005 that 68% of students with an emotional exceptionality also have an extreme significant delay in their processing speed. Lagging skills in this particular area can lead to an increase in students' frustration when learning educational tasks, which then leads to even higher rates of anger or emotional outbursts because now they're frustrated that they can't follow the directions or that they can't process the information that's coming at them in the classroom. The long-term impacts during the literature review revealed that in 2004, over 1/3 of students were being taught outside their classrooms and away from their general education peers. They are also 4 times as likely to be educated in a private day setting. And these staggering statistics demonstrate why it is so critical for new and updated interventions to be used in order to teach students. The 8 limbs of yoga, which was also another area that I reviewed during my literature, was the idea that people need to find balance in their life and in their bodies. It shows that these 8 belief systems, when implemented in yoga, can provide a path for people where they can achieve success in their life and have more positive relationships. This was created by Panjoli, a sage who wrote the Yoga Sutras and mapped out the 8 steps for people. The first limb, yama, helps a person to turn their focus on their own life. Students who have an emotional exceptionality can sometimes spend a significant amount of time comparing themselves to others, which then leads, again, to an emotional reaction because maybe they're not as good enough or they don't have the same skill sets. The second limb, niyamas, is an internal discipline. This limb helps students to learn how to implement nonviolence and respect. not only towards themselves, but towards others as well. So this really works on students being able to find different methodologies in order to not have negative self-talk and some of those things. The third limb is asana, and this limb stands for focus and attention to tasks. Expanding on an individual's ability to focus and attend to the tasks at hand in order to be able to gain insight into the world around them. Obviously, this is super critical for success. This also teaches people to focus on the positive things that they have in their life instead of the negative. Limb 4 is pranayama. This is the study of breath. When students become angry, they tend to breathe from the top of their lungs instead of really taking in that nice deep breath. When students learn how to do this, it helps calm their body instead of staying in that agitated place. Limb 5 is dharana, which is our concentration. Of course, if we teach kids how to be able to concentrate, focus on the things in front of them instead of all of the things around them, it then allows them to be able to focus on the tasks at hand, even if they become difficult. The sixth limb is dhyana, which is the meditation or contemplation. This phase is a place where people internally are able to kind of let go of thoughts that are impacting them across different modalities or different places in their life. And all of these limbs are based off of each other. So in order for somebody to get to a place of meditation or contemplation, they have to first be able to kind of embody these other limbs. The final limb is samdahi, and this is a state of ecstasy. These 8 limbs provide the foundational teaching that is necessary for yoga to be an effective intervention for students. And as students engage in yoga practice, they should begin to develop these teachings and belief systems into their daily lives, which can then be transferred to other locations. The conceptual framework. The current research pendulum shows that there are a variety of interventions being implemented. However, despite all of these interventions, research shows that something is still missing for students and teachers. Students living in the world today are more likely to encounter stressful situations and are impacted by traumatic events as well as pressure to perform academically. Students who have emotional exceptionalities are less likely than their general education peers to receive positive praise from their teachers, even though research shows us that they in fact need more of that. Our level systems are based on students receiving more rewards as they demonstrate positive behaviors. Again, this is based on students being able to understand what behaviors they're supposed to be exhibiting. If they don't have the skills, then it doesn't matter what the reward is. Also, while the student has negative behaviors, they move down the level system, which is supposed to be holding students accountable for their behaviors, but doesn't always do that. Again, level systems also do not transfer out necessarily in the world that we live in, because it's not like kids have a level system that moves up and down as they go through their workforce or as they move into high school and other locations. The Boys Town model, which is another program for behavioral supports for students, works on a tier level. Students and teachers work on building a positive relationship while teaching them personal responsibility. There's day-to-day modeling of the skills and teaching of new behaviors. However, one of the issues that we find with Boys Town model is that research states that this type of system will not work for every single student. Students in 3rd grade move from learning to read to reading to understand, but without the ability to focus and attend and stay on task when things get difficult, students can begin to develop emotional exceptionalities that impact them for a lifetime. Students with emotional exceptionalities, according to Peck in 2005, have a decreased attention to task, which decreases their ability to access knowledge, and they reach a frustration level sooner than other students. And unmanaged stress is believed to be a causal effect of mental health problems and behavioral problems for students, which CALSA found in 2012. Teaching students deep breathing, yoga poses, and meditation that comes from yoga practice has been found to alleviate the symptoms and stress related to the lives of adolescents, as well as improve overall focus and concentration. So this theory and how it connects to my current research is that helping children be able to identify why they are angry and what they can do to manage and work through the feelings is essential. And studies around yoga show that it can reverse a person's negative self-perception and increase their ability to implement positive coping skills. Of course, if I feel more positive and I feel better, then I don't want to necessarily attack the people around me. There's also a growing body of research that's analyzing skill deficits by Dr. Green. They are categorized as either internal or external behaviors that students display. Students with emotional exceptionalities often struggle with interpersonal skills. The research in yoga shows that yoga can increase calm, self-love, and treating people and themselves with respect, which again, I've talked about, decreases internal and external behaviors, and then of course, better relationships. Roughly 13% of the 400,000 students who have an educational diagnosis of an emotional and behavioral exceptionality do not participate in learning with their gen ed peers. And a national perspective on children in 2004 was conducted. Their original goal was to improve student services or for services for students with emotional exceptionalities. The problem is that this research didn't really make a dent in things. And as you can see from the research, things haven't really changed. Even with co-teaching and push-in models, students with emotional exceptionalities have continued to be behind other categories when participating with their general education peers. They've got a higher rate of social problems, fewer positive peer relationships, and this results in situations where they either are bullied or bully others, according to a study done by Darrow in 2014. And helping students through yoga to develop a calm nature and positive self-esteem can diminish their need to bully others. Students who feel a prolonged sense of frustration, anger, and sadness begin to lose hope, but it's also a part of many students' lives who have an emotional exceptionality. And once students begin to learn to control their thoughts using yoga techniques, they can set goals and monitor their emotions, decreasing the negative impact of frustrations and failures that they may feel. The key points in my research study was that the number of students impacted by trauma and emotional exceptionalities is increasing, and other interventions are just not working as effectively as they need to. There's a minimal number of studies around the positive impact of yoga in the classroom, and the research has been conducted, but the research that has been conducted is extremely promising. Yoga is an opportunity for students not only to have a physical activity in their life, but it also helps students to practice an activity that decreases signs and symptoms of depression, and it can also push them mentally. A pilot study conducted by Fishbein in 2016 found that when completing yoga with high-risk students, there was an overall decrease in alcohol use. There was improvement in overall emotional control and sustained attention during difficult situations that they encountered with teachers. However, one of the major problems that many of the studies face is that there isn't consistent research to support how long a yoga session needs to be or how many yoga sessions a student needs to engage in before they really have positive results. And a research study conducted by Steiner in an urban school setting found some promising results on the number of students having an increase in attention, but no other promising or positive results were found. My methodology in research design, I chose to do a qualitative case study methodology for two reasons. One, Sachs and Kern in 2008 found underlined information from evaluating survey data, and I knew that I wanted to do some surveys with the teachers and such, and so that was going to be really important for me. The other reason was because of the small number of students that I had that I would be working with. Having a variety of data gathered using various methods helped provide me the most comprehensive look at the impact this study might have on students. The data collected in this case study not only included observational data, but it also included survey data to analyze overall changes in students' behavior from a teacher's perspective. And the power of the observational data, which I'll get into a little bit later, had some really promising opportunities and results for students. The school district where I did my study was conducted in a suburban public school. There were 5,660 total students in 10 schools. There's one middle school, there is one preschool through second grade school in the district, and there is one school who teaches 3rd through 5th graders. In the district overall, there are a total of 2,924 males and 2,736 females. The school where the research study was conducted had a total of 30 students. All students are on an individual education plan and are not educated alongside their gen ed peers. 28 of the 30 students were on free and reduced lunches, and 8 of the students received food bags to help supplement their food sources. There were also a total of 6 females and 24 males enrolled in the program. And again, the school does not have any students who are not placed on an IEP. And in order for students to be able to go back to their home campuses, they do have to demonstrate certain positive behaviors. The teachers who participated in this study were 2 middle school teachers, one who teaches science and one who teaches math. Each one of the teachers has a homeroom classroom, but the students don't stay in the room all day, and the other teacher is a K-2 teacher. She teaches the students all day for all subject areas. They don't change any classrooms or anything like that. The teachers were all screened for participation in the study. I wanted to ensure and make I wanted to ensure that they would be willing to fill out the observational data, and that they were interested in how this study was going to impact their students as well. And also their experience ranges from 4 to 15 years in the classroom. Their range of being in this particular school is like 3 years up to 10 years as well. Overall in the study, there were 2 students who were African American, 5 that were Caucasian, and 2 Hispanic students. There were 7 total males and 2 females. Each teacher who had a student participate in the study completed an executive functioning survey assessment on those students prior to them engaging in the yoga sessions. And then when the 6 weeks was up, they completed another survey. In order to determine which students were going to participate in yoga, I first asked all students their preference. Teachers were asked which students had more than 3 physical restraints in a week, and a purposive sampling was utilized instead of a snowball because of the nature of my research. To determine the right sampling size, it was critical to have a large enough sample size to really see if there would be a difference or if changes would be noticed. And if the group was too small, I knew that it would be incredibly difficult in order to see changes. During this study, all of the procedures were followed in order to ensure that confidentiality and students' rights were protected. Their names were not on any of the data sheets, and all information was locked in the filing cabinets. I utilized 5 different instruments in gathering the data to be able to answer the research question and the 3 sub-questions. The first instrument that I utilized gathered data, asked teachers to rate where students fell on the scale. The assessment was given both before and after the 6 weeks of yoga. The categories ranged in questions from how organized the students were, how much they struggle to start or initiate a task. It further asked if students forget things that were important or if they have trouble following conversations because they become distracted. The form was turned into a Google Doc that would allow the teachers to fill it out quickly and efficiently, especially on this instrument because they were filling out so many questions before students went to yoga and after students went to yoga. The instrument then reported a score of where students fell. I apologize. So this first instrument was just the one on the executive functioning, and they filled it out before and after. Where students fell on the likelihood of having a deficit in that particular executive functioning area. Students who demonstrated a score of 50% or higher were likely to have a delay that was impacting them in the classroom. My second instrument, and my third instrument utilized a form that teachers and staff have, and it looks at restraints and seclusions or timeout. The third one looked at the types of incidences that happened. And so really looking at the third instrument, it's just a form where maybe kids have an incident of cussing or they have an incident where they threaten somebody. It's not enough to require them to have a restraint or seclusion. The fourth instrument is a form that was filled out on observations during the yoga session. It had notes on students' behavior before, during, and after the yoga session, and it asked questions around how did students participate, did they follow the directions, did they get their mat ready, did they try difficult poses. There was also a notes section on this form that could be filled out if there was additional information needed. The fifth instrument, which I just had talked about previously and started to talk about, was the Google document where they filled out 1 hour prior and 1 hour after the yoga session. The anecdotal records included, but were not limited to, behavioral data, incidences, actions by the students, as well as how organized they were or how many redirections that they needed. This instrument also provided some of the most important data that I needed for my study. The analysis of the questions was stated to not be confusing or misleading in order to ensure reliability measure was followed, and the behavior text also filled out the measures for the K2 class. The executive functioning assessment was taken before and after yoga sessions took place, and as well as after students engaged in yoga practice. During the study, in order to minimize ethical concerns of the study, safety poses and cool down poses were utilized. Procedures were implemented and taught to students prior to the yoga session in case they needed support, because sometimes yoga can become overwhelming or dredge up emotions they weren't expecting. However, none of these measures were needed during the study. I also did a 5-minute breathing warm-up and guided meditation that was conducted at the beginning of each session. This helped to build heat in the body and warm up so that students were ready to perform the yoga poses. This also helps to ensure that muscles were protected as they moved through them. If students felt triggered, again, as I mentioned, there was a plan to offer them a journal to work through their feelings, and parents would have been notified immediately. Teachers were also made aware of this plan in order to be able to decrease the risk to students during the study. They had access to the social worker on campus if it was needed. And again, however, none of this was needed during the study. Some of the limitations the study faced was that it was observational. To minimize these limitations, teachers were trained on what type of data to take. Sample sources of data limitations included the questions on the executive functioning assessment because they were limited in nature and scope, and they focused on broad executive functioning categories, not necessarily specific. This was done for only 6 weeks, where there may be benefits beyond what was recognized if studies engaged in yoga for an entire year. There was also a small sample size, but it would be beneficial to conduct this survey with a larger population of students. There was also a limitation in the study that the students only were placed in a level D and were on an IEP. During the time of the study, students were also engaged in benchmark assessments. This benchmark assessment assesses their ability and varying skills over a chunk of time. This can be emotionally taxing for students. Research shows that the time frame in which a case study can be done also depends greatly on how long it takes to analyze the data and how much time it takes before an intervention can really show change for students. The limitations that I faced is that the students were not interviewed directly if they made comments about yoga. Those notes were written down, but they were never asked their opinions directly. Teachers were trained on how to take data in order to minimize these types of things. The first instrument used was 15 questions that the teachers filled out about students' executive functioning processes. They filled this out prior to students starting yoga and after the 6-week session. Prior to the study, 6 out of 9 students were demonstrating significant delays in their executive functioning processes. This is shown in the grid below, where students had significant percentages over the 50% mark. But after the study, you can see that 4 students had a score above the 50%, and of those 4, only 2 had an increase. The rest displayed significant decreases in executive functioning processing delays that were impacting them prior to the study. In order to answer the question, sub-question 1, which is the high incident behaviors, I found that there was a decrease in restraints overall, which only is used when students demonstrate risk behavior. There was also a decrease in overall timeouts. However, there was an increase in incidences such as verbal aggression towards people, and there was also a significant decrease in seclusions. In order to analyze sub-question 2, I looked at whether there were differences in classroom behaviors. Research found, based off of teacher observations, that there was a number of decreases in certain negative behaviors during my studies, such as work completion and organization. But results did yield an increase in verbal escalations and peer-to-peer conflict, which I'll kind of go into a little bit later. And as you can see, though, there were some very positive behaviors that emerged from my study. Sub-question 3 analyzed whether there was a change in students' participation, linking to the idea that the more motivated students are, the more likely the student will engage in the behavior. These results showed that overall students had a high level of engagement on Monday, but there was a decrease in participation on the other 2 days. This data looked at whether students were being silly or attempting poses and following directions. This data here was the most impactful data from my research study, the data collected from Instrument 3, which had a notes section. Here, the teachers wrote down comments and feedback that they had about students. And some of the patterns that you'll notice is that 103 times it was coded that students did not need redirections or did not have any issues. And the highest next category is peer trouble at 13 incidences over the entire 6 weeks of the study. During the yoga sessions, there was observational data that showed that students engaged in positive behavior choices despite peer conflict and other negative situations. Yoga demonstrated an ability to infiltrate students' dysregulation and turn their attention to classroom learning, as evidence of the number of students that had a decrease in executive functioning processing delays. Students engaged in other behaviors during the 6 weeks of yoga instead of instead of physically aggressive behaviors, again, as evident of the comments that the teachers made, and also the low number of restraints. The higher the percentage of dysregulation with students' executive functioning, the higher rates of disorganization, verbal and physical aggression, and focus. Again, that's according to Benner in 2008. While the results from the notes section of the study found that students who regularly engage in negative off-task behaviors instead only needed redirections 5 times over the 6-week time frame. And it was noted that only 10 times the teachers marked that students were being chatty and 8 times that they were distracted from the learning. These results are incredibly positive and show that, in fact, yoga can impact the classroom behaviors of students, besides them being less argumentative or students having less conflict with each other. Educators today have an increasingly difficult job in providing the right supports to students, especially as more and more students are impacted with trauma, and students with behavioral or emotional disruptions account for over 50% of the behavioral disruptions that occur in a school. And even though this is only 1 to 2% of the entire population of a school. These findings show that while executive functioning delays exist in students with emotional disabilities, yoga has the ability to positively impact this area of the brain over time. And cognitive behavioral conceptualization states that individuals need to learn and know what triggers them in order to be able to handle the feelings around that frustration. Students who have poor coping skills, poor self-esteem, or their code of living elicits anger can then become triggered to respond in an aggressive manner when faced with difficult life decisions. The overall study results found that students engaged in less risk behaviors, reducing the overall number of restraints needed, and they were more engaged in the learning. This means that the results of the study lend credence to the idea that yoga can help students develop different schemas and coping skills to handle frustrating situations. This causal relationship between classroom behaviors and yoga could provide a framework for future teachers to decrease stress, frustration, and problems in the classroom. The behavioral theory of communication supports that students engage in behaviors in order to communicate something to the people around them when they cannot verbalize what is going on. Depression, anxiety, emotional disturbances, and other behavioral disorders in children can manifest themselves in a variety of ways. And the current research study found that yoga resulted in significantly decreased intrusive thoughts, emotional arousal, and that students' overall ability to complete work increased over the 6-week time period. This is, of course, based on my Instrument 5 data. A wrap-up of the review of literature: 26% of students are not receiving an education that's equivalent to their general education peers. In the link to the study, they do not have access to the same curriculum, and without research like this, students who have an emotional exceptionality may continue to sit in classrooms without the support that they need. However, the results of this study, similar to the study by Fishman, found an increase in students' emotional control and sustained attention to task. Our executive functioning and ability to take in information and process it is essential to all of our day-to-day tasks. Helping students to sustain attention during difficult tasks or tasks that they do not necessarily enjoy as much can obviously open up doors for them to succeed in the world around us. The practical implications of this study is that yoga is a two-pronged approach to support students with emotional exceptionalities, because it not only impacts students' executive functioning delays, it shows that students can increase their attention and focus. Educating students with emotional exceptionalities requires students to not only be adept at knowing what academic skills a student has and teaching it, but also knowing how to implement strong behavioral strategies. But neither one of these other level systems or positive behavior supports change the neural pathways that students with emotional exceptionalities have. On the other hand, research shows that yoga can achieve this result when it's done with fidelity and consistently. It is my recommendation for future studies that they could look at the impact of yoga for students who engage in the practice for an entire school year. Also, students who demonstrate negative behaviors in the classroom are required legally to have a behavior intervention plan that meets their needs. A study could evaluate the impact that yoga has if it's added into a behavior plan as an intervention. Also, once this intervention is added, the research study could look at how many students actually need to be educated in a more restrictive environment, or whether they're able to stay in their home schools. Another area of research that could be done would be looking at whether students who move from a restrictive placement and are not educated with their general education peers are able to return to their home campus, and how successful they are with yoga as an intervention. There could also be future research that looks at whether students need to have a live teacher, or whether an online yoga teacher would yield positive results for students as well. The overall results of the study were promising and could provide an opportunity for schools and other researchers in the future to use this valuable practice to support students in a variety of educational settings. While some of the studies have mixed results on the positive impact, we know that other things just are not working. We also know that teachers are leaving the field for a variety of reasons, and one of those reasons is because they feel they do not have the ability, the support, or the tools to help students with such extreme behavioral disruptions. We need expert teachers to stay in the profession, and these students need an experienced teacher even more than their general education peers. Yoga can give teachers another tool to use because it is an intervention that can be used in any environment with any age group of students, which allows it to be generalized to a variety of settings with various students. Replication of this study is possible, and mindfulness is an intervention which is utilized for urban youth and can be done without a high cost. So when you combine yoga with mindfulness, you can potentially get an even greater success rate. Depression, anxiety, and self-doubt are impacting the students sitting in front of us. Yoga, when done consistently, can help students to learn to re-engage and love themselves, as well as providing an opportunity for students to grow as a person. There are so many different reasons that however, there are a lot of different reasons that a change can occur in students' behavior. So change in medication, going to high school, or living situations. So while the results from this study show a causal change in students' behavior, it's not able to draw a definitive line of change, and more research studies should be conducted in order to see if the results transcend other programs and other situations with other students. Executive functioning processes are the ability of a person to be able to organize their life in one's day, as well as help them to be able to handle difficult situations. This study supported that this is an intervention that is worth trying with students in order to give them something more. In conclusion, in 2013, over 679,000 children were impacted by trauma. It's essential that students have teachers who can find creative ways to balance their academic and social emotional needs. This trauma further leads to students having strong emotional reactions to the world around them instead of being able to filter through and process their emotions. They grow to have deficits in their emotional regulation, and this research study and others like it confirm that yoga can be a part of that change. Yoga can be a practice that teaches students to bring their mind and their body into sync, as well as for them to learn positive ways to breathe through difficult situations. This particular research study was in line with the theoretical framework that yoga could provide a positive outlet that meets students' needs. Behavior is a form of communication utilized in behavioral sciences to create an understanding for individuals in order to find the root cause of behavior, Bruin in 2019. If educators look at behavior as a form of communication, they can slowly peel away the layers of emotional negatives that are impacting a student. By utilizing yoga as an intervention for students, the results of the study demonstrated that the idea that yoga can be a new form of communication for students in order to let go of the things that are bothering them and give them a positive outlet, instead of using negatives to communicate their wants and needs. Yoga, especially during the opening and closing sessions, can help people to gain control over their erratic thought. The references that I used in this PowerPoint are provided in the written dissertation. What questions can I answer?
Okay, fantastic job, Austin. That was really good. Definitely show that you're a true expert in this field. I thought you did an outstanding job. You know your research inside and out. You know this topic inside and out. So really great job with us.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'd also like to say absolutely wonderful job. Very, very impressive.
Yeah, definitely very impressive. So the way it'll work now, I just have 4 questions that I'm going to ask you. Then I'll turn it over to Dr. Levonier, and then she'll ask any questions that she has. And then after that, Dr. Levonier and I will deliberate and then let you know what we decide. Okay, so my first question is just, what do you plan to do with your study moving forward once you finish up?
So I'm actually directly working with our new SPED director to try and get yoga as a consistent intervention for the program at the school that I did the study in. so that that can kind of continue to be a benefit for students. I also have been talking to principals in the district when they're creating intervention plans for students or when they're struggling with behaviors to implement some type of a consistent yoga program for kids. Because again, really online yoga is as readily available as an in-person is. And so trying to just directly impact the district. I also plan on publishing these results in order to just kind of lend credence to the field. So that's where I'm at right now.
Okay, and I think that's great. I think some dissertations you look at and you wonder what the significance is. This one, you don't have to really wonder at all. I mean, it's right there and all the research that you have. I think it's going to be a tremendous help to teachers and ultimately students, which is really most important.
Yeah.
Next question I have, I'm sorry. What did you say?
No, go ahead.
Oh, okay. What was your favorite part of your study?
I think the favorite part of my study, there was a couple of students who I was observing in other places, and they would be like practicing yoga poses and stuff. And when I first started doing it, they were like, "This is too hard. I'm not going to be able to do this pose." And I was like, "No, we're gonna build up. It's fine. We have 6 weeks to do this together." And so watching them practice in other places, I would definitely say was pretty awesome. So.
Okay, great. What was the most challenging part of your study?
Solidifying my methodology. I think in all of this, there was so much data that I ended up gathering from the 5 instruments, and it wasn't clear to me really like how much data I would end up with. And so being able to just really kind of decipher what all of that was telling me at the end and what those patterns were was difficult. And then of course, just the best way to present that information, because there was so much of it in varying aspects of the study.
Okay, great. And then I have one final question. Were you surprised by any of your results?
I was really, really surprised by the fact that there were 103 times that teachers marked down that there were 0 instances or nothing going on with kids, especially when I was looking at the other categories and I really started coding everything. And it like 13 incidences where kids were verbally talking or something like that compared to 103 of nothing was pretty amazing. And I definitely did not anticipate that. I think the other thing that was kind of a surprise for me was just the actual number of kids that decreased in their executive functioning delays overall. I mean, obviously, of course, when you do a study, you're like hoping for really positive results, but this was something that I wasn't really sure would show up in such a short amount of time of 6 weeks. So that was definitely a surprise for me as well.
Okay, great. Thank you. Yeah, I thought that 103 number was fantastic to see. It definitely shows that it's making an impact on students, so it's great. All right, I'll turn this over to Dr. Leveille. You can ask Austin any questions you have.
Okay, perfect. And again, I need to say you did an excellent job, and I love and appreciate the research that you've done because I teach teachers. And to be honest with you, one of my questions was going to be how are you planning on disseminating this information? But I know you said you talked about your district and talking to the principals in the schools there. Do you plan to maybe try to branch this out even further?
My hope is that I will be able to find an opportunity where I'm teaching teachers as well in other districts in a teaching program, because I think this is a place where that would be an opportunity for me to share my research with new teachers who are going out in the field and where we're trying to build their toolbox. So I would absolutely love to be able to do some of that. I do a lot of professional development for some other places around the state. And so I'm constantly having conversations with teachers around national boards and some of those kind of things as well. And so now that my research study has concluded and I've kind of like wrapped my thoughts around things, I know that there's going to be opportunities for me to have conversations. And in fact, like this week, I'm working on a random project around how to support paraprofessionals with another institution in the state. And again, it's a perfect place for me to bring in some of the research around yoga and how using deep breathing and some of those practices, paraprofessionals can do that to de-escalate situations with kids. So I think it'll just grow as the days go by and the weeks go on. So.
Very nice. And that kind of leads me into my next question, since you've become the expert here with this intervention. What are your thoughts about using this with all students, and not just those with emotional disabilities or autism?
I think it's one of the areas where, particularly with districts struggling for financial, to make financial decisions, right? Or money is less and less for schools. And so I think this is a really great intervention that can be done with any kids. And so as I've done my research study, I've been watching the school districts that are replacing meditation and mindfulness rooms with suspensions and expulsions and some of those kind of pieces, because we know that that's not working. And so I definitely think that this type of study, alongside the other ones, lends itself to supporting all the kids. And I heard a quote from somebody that said, if you teach all kids to meditate by the age of 6, which goes along with the beginning of yoga, where you just kind of spend a few minutes internalizing things, that you would eradicate hate. And I think that's a really powerful statement and an opportunity for schools to do better for kids and to provide them something that allows them just to come into a very calm space and really think about who they want to be and the decisions that they're making and some of those kind of things. So yeah, I definitely think this type of intervention can be done with any kid.
That's amazing. And then my last question, and then I just kind of have a side question. I hope that's okay. My last question is, what would you have done differently with your study?
I love the research with the kids. But as I started to kind of, I guess, unpack some of this, I was kind of curious about what the impact of doing yoga with new teachers would be. And so I honestly would probably go that direction where, again, I think yoga for kids is great. And I think this study was hugely helpful. But we are losing teachers in Arizona and across the nation in droves. And so I would love to see if new teachers are kind of supported with yoga from the get-go of their school year, how does that change our retention rates and some of those kind of things. Within my study itself, the piece of things that I would probably change would go back to kind of that observational piece of things. I really would like to interview the students, because there were a couple of kids who really hated yoga at the beginning of it. And it was dragging them to class. And every day for the first 7 minutes, it was this gigantic complaint session. And then at the end of it, they were like, we love yoga. We don't know why we hated it so much. And so I would have liked to have gathered some of that feedback. And so I would definitely do just a quick survey at the end of the yoga, hey, how do you feel? What did you notice? That kind of thing.
Very nice. I think you've got a great opportunity to do another study with the teachers. I think that's an amazing idea. And then this is just kind of a personal question. I kind of want to get your thoughts on this, because I do teach teachers. And to be honest with you, I'm going to be citing you in my classes with it, talking about interventions. So again, I'm just very proud. Do you think that the online yoga would be just as effective as the in-person, or what are your thoughts on that?
My only thing about the online yoga, and I think this is definitely a place where I go back and forth, part of being a teacher in yoga, because I went through the 200-hour certification to become a yoga certified teacher. But part of what we learn is how to realize when somebody is doing a movement wrong and needs to correct it. And part of the alignment then goes into, if you're doing yoga poses wrong long-term, then that impacts your overall just good feeling. And so my concern with online programs is that there isn't necessarily somebody there who understands the true alignment of what a body needs to look like. And then the other piece of things would be if kids are feeling triggered, or there's this just emotional flood, again, that I didn't experience, but that other people can, you need to have somebody there who is at least mindful and aware of those type of things in order to be able to help kids, because otherwise kids are going to just shut down and not want to do it. Also, online program or online teachers, again, depending on what form you're using, may not be super encouraging to kids, like, hey, you've got this, you can do this. Whereas an in-person trainer is going to have that relationship with people. So I would say if you can't get a yoga teacher, because again, money is tight everywhere, online would be better than nothing. But if schools can really, find maybe a yoga certified program that they can pair up with, where, because teachers have to do, when they're going through their yoga certification, they have to do so many like internship kind of hours and stuff and practicum kind of hours in some of the programs. And so if you could really pair up with a yoga school where teachers could come in, it would probably be more beneficial. But I would say if you're stuck between a rock and a hard place of like no yoga versus online, I would go with online than nothing.
Okay, thank you very much.
Mm-hmm.
Those were my only questions.
Okay, great. And nice job with even answering those questions, Austin. What we're going to do now is Dr. Lemonnier and myself, we're going to just talk about your presentation, talk about your defense of the questions, and then we'll get you back on and we'll tell you the results. If you can mute your Zoom meeting, and what I'll do is I'll send you a text letting you know when we're ready for you to come back on. It won't be too long at all necessarily. So just watch for a text that I'll send you, and then you can unmute your Zoom meeting, and we'll tell you the results. Does that make sense?
Yep, sounds good.
Okay.
Thanks, guys.
All right, thank
Yes,
you.
of course.
All right, so what are your thoughts?
Oh, she nailed it.
Yeah,
I
I
mean,
think so too.
that was absolutely fantastic. To be
Right.
honest with you, Chris, first of all, I've learned so much. And I'm sorry, as soon as we got done, because it's fresh in my head, I'm actually texting a friend of mine who's a yoga instructor.
Okay.
I want to pull Austin's study. I want to give it to her, and I want her to start reaching out to some of the schools around here.
Yeah, that's great.
To say, hey, this is what yoga can do, because I'm that impressed by these results.
Right. Yeah, I agree with you. I think she completely nailed it too. I mean, she did a fantastic job, and
Yeah.
really.
And she made the changes that we talked about that I really wanted her to do, and that was awesome. I looked at it; it was in the right places. It was perfect.
Yeah. Right. Okay. So here's my issue right now. So I'm at school, and I have a bell is going to ring in 2 minutes. What I don't want to do is be congratulating Austin with finishing her oral defense as a bell is ringing in the background.
Okay.
So if you don't mind, I'm going to wait until 11:46 until that bell rings. So like I said, it's only about 2 minutes. Then I'll get her.
That's totally fine.
I just don't want to have the her biggest accomplishment be accompanied with a school bell. So, but I'll once the bell rings, I'll get Austin on.
Okay, yeah, that's totally fine.
Okay.
Yeah, my parents are actually here watching my son, so it kind of worked out perfect.
Okay. All right. Yeah, students are. I'm on lunch right now, but I have students out in the hallway changing classes. I don't know who's going to be knocking on the door, so I just want everybody kind of cleared out and make sure she gets the credit that she deserves for this.
Yes, no, I agree. So my question is, so what is, because I'm not really familiar, I mean, I know, the process at Aspen, but how long will this take to get published? Because it'll go into like ProQuest or EBSCO, one of those, right?
Yeah, I'm almost 100% sure Aspen does not publish this at all. It's the responsibility of Austin to publish it.
Oh, okay.
At least that's the way it happened with the first student that finished up with me.
Okay.
Her responsibility. And like I said, I'm not sure how long that will take.
Okay.
So yeah, unless the regulations have changed with Aspen, I'm not quite sure, because I know they're doing a lot of changes. But
yes, they are. Yes.
I had a student finish in the fall, and he had to publish his own if he wanted. So,
okay.
Yeah. So yeah, I'm not quite sure how long that will take.
Oh,
there you go. All right, now I'll get Austin on here.
Okay.
So here's what I'm going to say to her. I'm just going to say, Dr. Lemonnier and I want to congratulate you, Dr. Echeverry, on successfully completing your oral defense. then talk about how she's done a fantastic job. We're excited. Her only assignment now is just to celebrate this great accomplishment.
Oh, I love it. It's so exciting.
Yeah, it's exciting.
Mine feels like it was yesterday right now while we're doing this. I remember I had a bottle of wine
Yeah, right.
waiting for me.
Yeah,
And as soon as they said that, I popped it open.
yeah.
Because I was on Arizona time and my people were in New York. So
Yeah, that's the way I was too. I was on Arizona time too, and I'm in Pennsylvania. And how long ago did you finish up?
2013.
Okay. Yeah, I finished up in 14, so.
Okay, so right around close, yes.
All right, I'm gonna send her a text. I'm gonna have her get back on.
Hello.
Hello. All right. So Dr. Levigné and I would like to congratulate you, Dr. Echeverry, on successfully completing your oral defense. You've done an outstanding job. We're both so excited, so proud of all the work that you've done. You do have one last assignment, though, and that is to celebrate this awesome accomplishment. Congratulations.
Thank you
We're
so
very
much.
excited for you.
Yes,
Yeah.
congratulations. You did such a fantastic job, Austin.
Thank you guys so much. I really appreciate it. I've heard absolute horror stories of people going through the process, and you guys made it super easy for me. So thank you for everything.
Yeah, you've been very easy to work with.
Yeah, you definitely have.
Yeah, we appreciate that, taking our recommendations and actually applying them. And I know this last little bit was a bit tough and challenging because you had to change a couple things, but I really appreciate that because I think it's made your study even stronger. And that is really important. Like I said, I'm going to be using you and citing you. And I actually just reached out to a friend of mine who's a yoga instructor here. I'm going to be sending her your study when I'm able to do that, if you'll allow me to do that.
Yeah.
And I want her to reach out. I was telling Chris, I want her to reach out to some schools around here.
Oh man, thank you so much. I appreciate it. I looked through everything at the end and really felt like each little bit just made it that much better too.
Mm-hmm.
And there were pieces as I was kind of looking through it, I was like, man, that's not as good as it could be. And I definitely want this to be something that people look at and there's validity to it. So yeah, I appreciate all of your guys' help and support and just an amazing journey. So thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, thank you.
Very proud.
Definitely been a pleasure and privilege of ours to work with you. So
Yahoo, I am going to celebrate in like a real way.
I'm like, are you at work? Go get out of there. Say, I'm taking the rest of the day off.
Yeah, don't go back to work, whatever you do. That's what I did when I finished up, and I regret it to this day. Do not go back to work, whatever you do.
We're technically still on contract, so I've got 410s, but
okay.
Anyway.
Right. Okay.
All right.
Well, great.
Yes, good luck to you. Make sure you get that published.
Yes. I will. Thank you. I've already got a line on getting that published, so.
Perfect. And can you just do me a favor and keep us and keep myself in the loop, because once you are published, I want to be able, it'll throw that much more strength too, behind what you've done. And I want to be able to get that out to some people I know around here. So.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Chris, is there logistical next steps that I need to be aware of?
So what I need from you is I'm going to need the recording to this meeting.
Okay.
From what I believe, I have everything. I have your final dissertation. I'm going to be posting your grade a little bit later today. I'm going to there's a couple forms that I've signed already. I just need to send them to Dr. Ballard. I need to send this video to Dr. Ballard. And other than that, I don't believe there's anything else that you need to do.
Okay.
Believe it or not, that's probably the first time you've heard that from anyone from Apple. Right?
It is, yeah.
But yeah, I think you are good to go. I will let you know if there's anything, but I'm pretty sure everything's good to go. Like I said, I just need the Zoom meeting document or the MP4. I don't know if you save this to the cloud or if it's a file that you're going to be sending me. The file may be a little tough to get from you because might be too big. So I don't know if there's a link or anything like that you can send to me, and I'll send that to Aspen.
All right, sounds good. Well, thank you guys so much. I appreciate it.
Congratulations again.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Have a great day.
Okay, bye, you too.
Bye.